Welcome to the Band Director Bootcamp podcast, the go-to place for busy band directors who want practical to build programs while maintaining balance in their lives. This podcast is brought to you by the Empowered Music Educator Academy, where we help directors like you find efficiency, sustainability, and impact in your teaching and leadership. And speaking of impact, our platinum sponsor, Kennelly Keys Music, has been serving musicians with a commitment to quality, reliability, and exceptional service. Whether you need top-tier instruments, expert repairs, or trusted advice, they've got you covered. Now, let's dive in and set the tempo for success.
Welcome to another episode of Band Director Bootcamp, the podcast with productivity and wellness tips for busy band directors. I'm your host, Lesley Moffat, and I'm really grateful to be sharing this platform with you. We know you don't have time to watch lengthy professional development webinars, so we bring you 20-minute tidbits with takeaways you can use to amplify your impact and not your workload. Stay tuned today if you have ever said to yourself, are they really practicing? And your students are saying, but we practiced, but nothing's getting better. And maybe parents don't know how to help at home, don't even maybe know that they're supposed to be practicing, and you're tired of reteaching the same mistakes because kids aren't practicing or aren't making the progress that they should be. And so if just in case that sounds familiar, what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about that very problem, how to get kids to pick up the horn, if you will, outside of your classroom. And then how can you help them create a habit, not just to practice quickly for a test, but to create a habit that's required for musicianship, that daily routine kind of thing. If there was a magic way to do it, you're going to learn about it today. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about a tool that'll help your students learn how to practice, motivate them. I'm talking motivate, when we make things fun and add some of that to it. And I got an answer for you or solution for that. And we're going to talk about how to increase student independence without increasing your workload. You don't need to monitor practice sheets, and parents will lie anyway sometimes. So you don't need that nonsense. So we're going to talk about a simple way to improve practice quality starting today and what you can do if you've ever wondered, why are the kids not getting any better and how can I support that? And I'm going to tell you or introduce you today to Alvin Simpson. Alvin had taught band for 4th grade through 12th grade in Pennsylvania for 7 years before he went to Eastman and did his doctoral work. And he's now the assistant professor of music and director of bands at West Liberty University in West Virginia. He is also here because I saw his new app called The Practice Pet. And I'm like, Alvin, this looks totally cool. Would you come on and talk to us a little bit about it? So today he's going to talk to us about why he created this kind of thing, identifying a practice gap and what caused him and inspired him to build a solution. So all that to say, Alvin, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah. I just got super excited because I'm doing middle school now. I say it a lot on here. I teach middle school now after a lot of high school. And boy, I just assumed kids would know how to practice and all these things. And they don't have habits. They don't have a lot of the skills they need to get better on their own. They don't know what that even means. And so tell us your story about what caused you to create this. What were you seeing? What were you hearing about what was needed? And why did you solve this massive problem?
So most of my time teaching K-12 was 4th through 7th grade bands. So I was very much in that realm that you're in now that you were speaking of, where not only do I have to teach them, please don't open the case that direction, flip it the other way, but also how do you practice? Not just, hey, go practice, but specifically the act of practicing. And initially, I saw students think, oh, I just go home, I play through my stuff, that's practicing. And then they come back and then they're frustrated because I had this expectation of this was going to be the progress that was made at home, and that's not what happened. So in my own teaching, I had to develop that kind of thing. Well, you need to create a habit of doing this thing daily. Here are the tasks that you have to do, and going from there. And I saw some benefit from it. I used some methods of extrinsic motivation when I taught middle school and elementary school, whether it be sticker charts or karate belt systems or you name it, I probably tried it. And it's kind of funny now that I created an extrinsic motivator, because most of my dissertation involved intrinsic motivation and how intrinsic is yeah. So I'm actually doing a presentation at a conference this week about intrinsic motivation, and I actually kind of throw the app under the bus a little bit, because all of these things are great if they're tied into just quality teaching. So that's kind of what led me into it. The app, it's creating something that gets the ball rolling. And I thought, as a millennial, I remembered the Tamagotchis from my childhood, where you had to come in a couple times a day and feed it and clean up after it, or it perished. And I thought, hey, with the technology available now, what if we made something that was like that, but for practicing? And then Practice Pet was kind of born from there.
Does the pet die if you don't practice enough?
So it doesn't die. The health lowers gradually of the pet over 48 hours or so. And as it gets lower, its expression changes. And when it hits, I think, under 10%, it stops swaying back and forth, and it does get little X's over its eyes, but it never officially dies, because you can always bring it back with the gift of music, as corny as that sounds. I also just thought it'd be kind of traumatizing if, there was a pop-up, you killed Larry or something like that,
Nervous. I thought I didn't check with them before we brought that in. So yeah, I'm glad it's not super violent at the end.
No.
Yeah, I've looked on the website and I see it's fun looking, it's engaging looking. And with the middle schoolers, they love a little competition, and I could see them, how's your pet, how's your energy, or whatever it's measured in, becoming fun with that. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, the whole practice record thing, kids can fudge those or whatever, maybe not be completely honest. This is a harder one to fudge, because tell us about the technology you've got going on this.
So the way it works is you click the practice button that's on the main page. You set up how long you want to practice for, and when you create your pet and everything, you select what instrument or instruments you practice, and you select that, and then it goes into a kind of calibration mode where once you grant microphone access, it records sound and stuff for a few seconds to get ambient sound, and then you play for 10 seconds so it can get a sense of your volume and everything. And then once the practice session proper starts, the timer only goes down when it detects that sound in that volume, because one of the things that we've all experienced is the idea of someone saying, oh, well, I practiced for 20 minutes. Well, did you, or were you in the room for 20 minutes and you actually only played for 5 minutes? So that was a way that the timer reflects the actual time spent doing something. And there's a little stats section in there where you can see how many times you've practiced, your total amount of practice things. And going back to the little bit of the competitiveness that you mentioned, I'm adding in some Game Center through Apple's Game Center thing, leaderboard stuff. So there's a thing for total amount of time practiced, the most XP or the longest streak for consecutive days practiced. And when you complete practice sessions, you not only regain some of the health of your pet, but you get XP towards leveling up, and you get some in-game currency that you can use to buy some aesthetic, you can buy some sunglasses or a hat or a little instrument for your pet to have, or some wall decorations and stuff like that to kind of deck out the room. And one of the things that I like with the total amount of time practice is every level that the pet goes up, it takes longer and longer to achieve the level. And so when it starts out real easy. If you, I think it's like 15 minutes or something. You put in what we would consider a please do this practice session. You level up and you get that that little bit of a dopamine hit or whatever it is to motivate you. But each level takes a little bit longer. So by the time you get all the way to the top level, it's something like 500 hours of practice. And if by that point you still need my app to motivate you to practice, we should have a discussion. Because that's the whole get them going until they don't need it. Eventually, they're going to stop using the app because they're going to be intrinsically motivated by the activities and the teaching of their instructor.
Right. And it's hard to be intrinsically motivated when it's hard and it sucks at first. Yes. And so if you can provide this little bit to the point where they get the habit and then they get the reward from the playing of the instrument. And then I love that. And then what I like about this too is if a kid says they're on a practice record that they've just filled out and the parent has signed, said they're practicing a certain amount of time and their playing's not improving, you're probably thinking, well, they're probably not practicing. But with your app, they're playing and they're doing something for that time. So you could then the conversation could be, if you're playing your horn this much, you really should be at this level. Let's figure out how we can redo your practicing. Because then it could be a matter of, well, I'm playing through stuff, not really practicing. And then it's a different conversation than not taking the horn out of the case. So at least they're playing though, right?
Yeah. I did forget. I will acknowledge that, given current, well, if nothing else, band director trying to be a coder limitations, there are a couple ways that they could fudge and, backdoor sound and all of that stuff. But if they show, hey, I practiced for 5 hours this week and they can still barely play a G, okay, maybe you didn't. There is a little bit of good faith in it. But yeah, I mean, if it's a nice way to track, it showed that you practiced for 180 minutes this week. Since the last time I looked at the number. That's awesome. Now let's hear what you can do. It's a nice way to, if nothing else, put up or shut up, right?
And for parents like things that can be measured. And if they, how can I support my kid? I'm not a musician. Well, we want to establish the habit of practicing. At least that piece the parent could help with. If you say they should average X number of minutes of playing per week or so, or whatever, you help the parent help their kid, because a lot of parents just say, I don't know how to help my kid in music, and they just don't. So, and parents want to help their kids, right? So if we can say, here's something you could do, why not? It could also alleviate some of the pressure from teacher workload, right? So the kids are starting to take some more ownership because they start to establish these habits, and their friends are on the leaderboard, and all of those things are happening. And then rehearsals start to change and become better and easier to run. Oops, lots of solutions come from this. How many problems you're solving? Hey, there's a bunch more questions I have for you that I just would like to take a moment and do a shout out to our podcast sponsor, the Empowered Music Educator Academy. If you're listening to this while thinking about everything still on your to-do list, I see you. One of the reasons I started building tools alongside this podcast was because even the best strategies don't help you if you're too exhausted to implement them. That's exactly why I created Band Director Buddy GPT. It's a productivity and wellness tool designed to think like a successful band director and support the real work behind the scenes, the planning, emails, scheduling, and problem solving, and more, so you can amplify your impact without increasing your workload. If you're a busy band, choir, or orchestra teacher who wants a sustainable way to do this job, you can learn more at banddirectorbuddy.com. All right, we are back here with Alvin Simpson, and we are talking about his cool practice pet. If you haven't peeked online, do go check it out. It's a cute app, and it's something that would be very engaging for kids. It's an awesome tool here. Talk to us a little bit about anybody that you've got that's using it, some of the comments that they make to you about how it's helping or what they're seeing as a result?
So I've definitely heard that it's made both students and directors pick up their horns more. Sometimes us as teachers will get home from a long day and think, oh, the last thing I want to do is practice, but we got to lead by example. So I mean, it's helped me pick up my horn a little bit more than I already do, to be honest, which is kind of nice. And I've heard that some students are coming in and showing their teacher, oh, I leveled up and now I can purchase this accessory or whatever, and they want to show off their pet. And there's a friend mode where you can, if you're friends with them in Game Center, you can go into that friend's practice room and help out their pet if they're kind of struggling a little bit. And there's a little bit of that kind of thing too. So there's a little bit of camaraderie. There was the competition we talked about, but there's some camaraderie as well of, oh, well, sunshine isn't doing too hot. Let me go help out a little bit. So that's been nice. It's been
Your
nice
band community too.
Yeah, that's just
it
it,
really
right?
does. That's another benefit right there.
Yeah. I know I mentioned being into the whole intrinsic motivation thing. I kind of subscribe to the self-determination theory. And part of that is the relatedness factor in the community building of I want to put in the work so I don't let down the people that look after me too. And it's that kind of revolving circle of camaraderie. So I tried to do a little bit of that in an extrinsic thing.
Oh, I love this. I think it's what kids need for now. It's solving a problem in a great way. You're promoting independent learners. It gives an opportunity for kids on a regular basis to reinforce strategies that are taught in rehearsals, not just cram for a playing test, because they've built skills and there's a whole difference. I don't have to convince anybody listening to this podcast that there's a difference, right, about building skills versus learn a song.
That was something that when I initially thought about building this, I very much got in the, back in my day mindset of, back in my day, I just practiced because I wanted to. Yeah, I started playing decades ago. So that's not fair. The way I grew up is different the way that this generation's growing up and their access to technology and all of the research on gamification and the benefits of it. I think it's something that if we embrace as a correct tool and not a replacement, I think it can be beneficial.
So do you suggest this as a classroom kind of thing, like get all your kids on it as a class, or as a private lesson type of thing? Or what would your suggestion be?
So I've seen it work a multitude of ways, where teachers recommend it to their students and then the students acquire it and the students have their own individual pets that they can take care of individually, which that was kind of my initial thought behind it, because that's fostering independent habits, right? Which that was the whole point, was habit building. But I have seen, and it's been super cute on some of the Facebook pages, teachers have shared pictures of their classroom practice pet that they have on during rehearsal and some of that stuff. That, in the more I thought about it, that was actually kind of smart, because I know myself as a director and conductor, I talk a lot sometimes. So what better way to get me to shut up than to make sure I'm taking care of my pet during rehearsal? I set the timer for X amount of time underneath whatever the bell schedule is to allot for some instruction and some announcements and all of the nuances of being a teacher, right? And that's our goal, is to by the end of rehearsal, we get to the end of that time. That wasn't my initial thought, but that's a really beautiful way of doing it. Especially, I recently, to account for the conductor aspect of being a musician, I added conductor as an instrument. So it allows us to engage in score study and stuff that has a little bit more variability with the decibel level and all the math behind it. But some of my students tried using it in rehearsal individually a couple times, and they got a little annoyed because if it senses too loud of a sound, it calls them out on using it during rehearsal and not during practice. I thought that was kind of funny. Especially, they're not afraid to call me out on anything. So they said, what the heck? It's not letting me do this. And I said, well, it's called practice pet, not rehearsal pet. But I think if the director uses that, it can be a really nice tool to do that very thing, in constant music making and less talk, more musicking, right?
Yeah, that's a really great tool. And lots of different ways to use this. I think what we've learned today that is practicing is a skill, and we have to teach that skill. Students deserve to be taught that skill, and part of practice is just establishing regular habits. And then as kids do this, that independence is going to build confidence. And when students improve faster, teachers regain rehearsal time and energy. So that's a win right there. So, Alvin, before I let you go today, can you tell us where can people go to find more about this so that they can find out if this is the right thing for their schools?
Yeah, so the app is currently available on the iOS store. Depending on when you listen to this, it might be available for Android. I'm trying to figure out how Android works. As a lifelong Apple person, that's been a big learning curve for me. So it's available in the iOS store if you just search for Practice Pet. I post somewhat regularly on a lot of the Facebook pages to try to get it out there. So if you go into like the middle school band director page or the music teacher page or music education, insert Facebook group that lets you self-promote.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how I found
exactly. You just search me up and, shoot me a Facebook message or, anything. I'm typically pretty quick to reply.
And he's a real person behind the app. So
I'm a real person.
This was great. I'm so glad that you didn't freak out when I just messaged you cold and said, hey, come on the podcast. So I want to say thank you very much to Alvin Simpson for being here. And that's a wrap on this episode of Band Director Boot Camp. Thanks to all of you out there who keep showing up every day to teach music. Hey, remember, success in music education isn't just about what happens on the podium. It's about taking care of yourself and setting up systems that work. Thanks for listening, and keep making a difference in kids' lives through the magic of music education. Before you go, I want to leave you with this. You don't need to work harder to be effective. You just need better support. Band Director Buddy GPT was created for music educators who care deeply about their programs but are tired of carrying everything alone. It's there to help you think through challenges, streamline the busy work, and protect your time and energy without lowering your standards. If that sounds like what you've been craving, head to banddirectorbuddy.com to explore how it works and decide if it's a good fit for you. Thanks for listening to the Band Director Bootcamp podcast and for the work you do every single day.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Band Director Bootcamp podcast. Remember, success in music education isn't just about what happens on the podium. It's about taking care of yourself and setting up systems that work for you. The Empowered Music Educator Academy is here to help you do just that. So be sure to check out our resources at empowerededucator.com. And of course, a huge thank you to Kennelly Keys Music, our platinum sponsor, for their unwavering support of music educators like you. Whether you need instruments, accessories, or expert advice, their team is ready to help. Thanks for listening, and keep making music happen.